Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This one I'm gonna be just doodling again, and if you're wondering what the lines are from on that page, it was from a previous demo, and I basically just kind of like drew past it to show kind of what 5-point perspective, and yeah, so that's why. But yeah, if you want to see, I have a video on perspective, mostly just 1 point and 5 point, since that's kind of aligns more with what I use for mine. I didn't really go into 2 point or 3 point since I don't really use those too much specifically. So yeah, and there's plenty of videos online about perspective in general, but figured I'd make a video on 1 point and 5 point, since 5 point isn't talked about as much, and I kind of like had a lot of things to talk about that are really helpful with like freehanding. And yeah, so just kind of gonna finish this one up. Not really like trying to finish it like in a hurry, but at least take my time with it. All right, get these markers out of the way. I don't know why, but I hate having like anything that's like within the area that I'm drawing that I could run into. Yeah, I was thinking about what to do for this one. Brush is getting a little dry. Okay. Yeah, and like for the rest of my drawings for shading, I like to use an ink wash with like a just any brush that you have, and then I use semi ink with water, but you can pretty much dilute any ink with water and it should do about the same. I mean, you can even take the ink out of the brush, or I've seen some people even dip their brush pen in water and use that to get some kind of gray tone. But if you really want and you don't have anything to add the gray tones and you want like black, white, and gray to be in your drawing, you can always, I'll kind of do like a little like spot of ink by placing it down, and then you can like smudge it out with your finger and get some kind of gray tone if you really want. It's a lot like of a softer gray tone because it's like way more blended and a bit kind of like charcoal when you do it in that way. And if you really want to use like the smudging sort of thing, I'd recommend a color brush or a water-based ink. Really, any water-based inks will smudge a lot better and spread out the ink evenly, where like a permanent ink like this gray like reservoir on the back there will be a bit harder to spread. And some permanent inks, well, they won't really spread, they'll kind of like dry very quickly and you'll end up with like black and then not much gray around it, or it'll just be a lot harder to get kind of a more natural looking shadow in. So yeah, you can do that if you like don't have anything else to shade, or there's a lot of different ways to kind of add gray value, like hatching and those sorts of things. So yeah, here I'm going to add some kind of sleeve in here. I really like doing like some asymmetrical things and a little bit variation. So like his arm, I have like the open like dead zombie kind of or undead arm over here, which was gonna, if I colored it, I was gonna have some like spirit kind of effect with the flames. But yeah, I've colored a lot, like so many of my drawings, and now when I'm drawing them, I'm really thinking about if they were colored, what kind of colors would I have in them? And that kind of feeds into a bit of the designs as well. So like it kind of feeds into like the whole design of the character, even though I'm probably just gonna keep this black and white, but who knows, maybe I'll color him depending on how the rest of the drawing turns out. But yeah, just the I really find that coloring a lot of the characters really helps me decide like, do I want to keep the armor open and white, or do I want to shade it or add black to it? So it just kind of helps like the decision making on a lot of the designs. And like I noticed one thing when I color a lot, I'll tend to add a lot of patterns because I like adding gold accents on armor especially. So I kind of like added all these different markings and designs that I know that if I color them, then I can use a gold accent, and then the rest I can do like a dark blue or some kind of thing to contrast with that. So yeah, a lot of my drawings now I kind of prep for them to be colored just in case I decided to do that. And I want to add like a him holding a flintlock here. I haven't drawn a flintlock in forever, so this is probably gonna be a little rusty. Yeah, one of the reasons that I don't use these brush pens, or I actually kind of hate them in a way, because they always, it doesn't matter like how many I've tried, you barely squeeze the back thing to get the ink into the cartridge, and it will eventually just dump on you, and then you have things like this where basically every line that comes out is going to be way too thick. So yeah, it's a bit annoying, and I prefer using traditional or like sumi ink really. But yeah, I try not to make too many excuses. I totally messed up the flintlock, but whatever. We'll just have it like this. I really wanted the back end to come up and rest on the side, but I don't know if I can do that. I, I'm gonna color this in black because when my brush likes to dump ink on me, it's a bit relaxing, just like dumping back on it. It's a bit of revenge to just get the ink like off. So I'll just add like extra black somewhere just to like light it off, because it becomes like very stressful when you're drawing with and you want like a lot of detail on the drawing, and then it just keeps basically shitting out ink on you. So yeah. I do want to try something. I had like a interesting idea of some kind of horse, or I don't know, any kind of beast that this samurai could ride. I used to think that everything kind of had to be like very realistic. If I wanted to make like a cool warrior or something like that, I'd have to do like a historical armor. But as time has gone on, I've kind of realized I can come up with my own stuff a lot more. Like, so if I want someone like riding, I don't know, like a creature or something, I'll just come up with my own kind of beast, and not necessarily worry about like doing a horse or something like that. Yeah, and that's kind of what I've been having a lot of fun with, is like in drawings like this. Kind of fits my mic. It's always in an awkward spot when I do these videos. But yeah, when I'm doing like a samurai or something, it's like not quite an actual samurai, but has a lot of like the same features. All the same like features that a samurai has, and then the horse down here has some of the features of a horse, but then I have a lot of freedom of what I can do besides that. And I think I've kind of always done stuff like this, especially for my tigers and cats. When I first started, looked very like dog like, but I find that it's really easy for me to learn if I come up with my own kind of creatures to fill in like that lack of experience and knowledge of how to draw a particular thing. So like for horses, like they're probably one of my worst things or subjects to draw. But if I do some like creatures that have a lot of horse features, then I'm starting to experiment with like those aspects that the horse has, and then from there I can kind of just like play around and mess with a lot of the same features and things. So that helps then like learn a lot of horse features. And like I always think if you kind of like go and play around and with like a horse or a samurai for drawing and you don't necessarily know what they look like, and then you go to watch like a few videos of a horse, then a lot of features will just kind of like click of why they might be useful in your drawing. So yeah, I think that's kind of important for learning. Just kind of seeing, playing around so you can find out like what's important for making it appear like a samurai or a horse, and like some like key things that make it look like a samurai over like a different type of warrior that um, might also be in the same kind of category. So yeah, even though it's like a undead horse, I'll add this kind of ear. And we could add some kind of like metals. I like adding a lot of these metals and different materials like the leather to kind of just like split up. So like a lot of his head is like a very bony kind of with some skin. So then having this like hair and then the leather of the straps and then like the metal earrings just kind of like adds a bit of layering to the character. So now I need to figure out how this kind of beast connects. So I'll just go downward. So like the character down here or up here, he's gonna end up going down and maybe his back will kind of like start to arch downward, and then I can kind of like guess where his legs will be. So I need to try to go downward. And then we'll have some wrapping. On the side there. I'll kind of continue the armor down. Okay. And from here, I kind of want to like figure out where this horse is. I always like to also when I'm drawing, using straight ink is a little bit of an advantage I kind of find because when I'm drawing with the ink, I'm seeing what's happening like instantly. So it kind of gives me like instant feedback of where the direction of the drawing's heading. And so like I see he's very up close onto the neck right now. And it's kind of like my like error I guess that I made. So if I can kind of like maneuver around and add things that may fix that as I go. So I could add a bit of like separating things. To maybe just like not make it as such a strong feature that he's very close up there. So we can add some materials that are strapped to the horse. We'll add some kind of banner. Yeah, honestly, nothing since I started the horse has gone the way I want. But that's just kind of how drawing goes. A lot of times, a lot of mistakes over and over and over. And I would say like every time that I go to draw, I'd say like 90% of the lines and things that I do is like mistakes, and 10% is probably like actually what I wanted to happen. And I don't know, just that's just kind of the flow of how art is really, and like in my opinion is a lot of mistakes over and over, and we're pretty much messing it up constantly. Like we're never really doing the right thing, or like it's just really difficult to have something be like directly feed off of what you're trying to do and have it always be accurate. So yeah, most of my art is just a bunch of mistakes. I don't really find it to be like a bad thing though. It's just kind of how the process really is. It's just kind of like trial and error over and over. All right, and then I'm gonna figure out how I want the shadow to be back here. Okay, and then I want to draw back the ear. Have it kind of drop back onto the cloth. kind of how I said earlier, getting rid of all this like ink in the pen. This is a really good way is drop shadows or cast shadows. And a lot of the shadows that I'm placing is to kind of get rid of like this weird distancing that's happening. So the horse is kind of like overlapping with a lot of the features on the samurai or warrior behind him. So I want to kind of have like the two separate from each other. All right, there's a bit of things I could do for the back end of the horse as well. One thing that I could do is so since the horse and the character are a bit like in this awkward spot, I want to kind of set up the rest of the scene and what I want to have there. So I, so since he's very heavy on like the front half of the horse, I just want to create something that balances it out. So then I'm creating something that's a bit heavy on the back ends, and then that will kind of balance the weight a bit, especially like black carries a lot of weight with it. So for the top, I want to do something on like the undead kind of. And I'll color in the skull, eye, and nose. Since I like kind of what I was talking about with thinking ahead a bit on the coloring really helps with the black and grays as well, since they're also like coloring. So I kind of like know that I want this flag to be black so that it has like as much weight as possible, so I can kind of like balance out some of my mistakes. And so we'll go down. I know when I talk about a lot of like that I make a lot of mistakes, or like when I talked about adaptive drawing, a lot of people kind of view it as like, oh, if you just learned more, then you wouldn't make as many mistakes. And I don't really think that's like the case because you can have a lot of knowledge, but it still takes a lot of time to implement that knowledge into like action. So even though I know I'm making all these mistakes and like kind of know the right move, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm always gonna make the right move. So it's just kind of something that happens, and there's a lot of ways to work around it. And I think that's the most important part is the workarounds to the mistakes and overcoming it rather than trying to prep so hard ahead of time that you want to just avoid all the mistakes because they're going to happen whether you're prepped for it or not. All right. So I have that. And then I have these flights kind of coming out. So I'm thinking a bit of how I want like these white areas to balance it out. So I want to do these crossbones. And the banner is kind of like split in half. So I'll just mirror whatever is happening on one side onto the other side as well. Okay. One thing I really like to do lately, and by lately I mean just the last few drawings that I've been doing, is when I go to do the blacks, I will be like a bit spotted with it, where I'm leaving a lot of like the detail intact as much as I can. So I'll purposely like play it more safe and leave a bit of like space in between these details. So like if I have this fold here, I won't just like color it all in black since I'll lose that fold design, but I'll just go around it and go around these details and like these little hatchings. I don't want to completely lose it. So I'll just kind of like keep it there. And I don't know, I kind of like the effect that it adds, and it makes the blacks a little more fun and not some like whole solid shape, and preserves a lot of the detail and things. I used to get a little mad when I would have a lot of detail on a character and then I'm like, oh, I need a lot of black or darker like contrasting colors, and then they'll just kind of kill all of the detail that I works hard on to get. But yeah, that's an easy way to kind of preserve some of that. And then the black itself kind of like groups it too, so I don't need to like worry about it being too messy since it's contained like within this object. And same with like the shadows and things. How I down here is very like spotted and spaced apart. But yeah, I think it's a fun way to add shadows. Whenever I'm doing shadows as well, I like to keep on angles. So I don't like rounded, like very rounded shadows or ones that take like a specific shape. Like I want to be very like crossing with it. I guess I can kind of show in here. There is a page in here that I don't like. I'll find that one. Yeah, this one. Okay. So yeah, if I'm like doing a character, and I want to like add shadows on him, I want to have like a bit of like cross, so something that's more like this versus like doing a strong shadowing on his face. So if I just do two, I guess. So this would be more of like a strong shadow in. And it definitely works like if since it's like grouped up in different things. But I don't know, I don't like these like rounded, how it's like very rounded off. And then it's like it works down here because it's very sectioned, so it kind of creates like that chaotic shadow that I like. But I try to stay away from like creating just triangles with the black or like a square or like circles. Like I try to stay away from just doing these. Like I'd rather have something like this or this. Or like just anything like this. I would take over doing it. So if I was gonna do the shadow, and I just like it more because you can like add a lot more detail. And then if I want to make it more clean and easy to read, then I'll go through and connect a lot of these together. And you can kind of see just by connecting them that it becomes a lot more readable. But yeah, I still like to have a lot of like the odd it's mostly like the exit points on the shadows. I just prefer something like this over that. It just looks a lot more interesting. I also find it a lot more like appealing and fun to do. I don't like to like keep things too tight. I like to keep things like ordered, but not necessarily like super clean and tight all the time. I feel like I kind of have like a meter when I'm drawing that if it's something is too well kept, then I feel the need to like do something messy to split up the idea a bit. Yeah, like I said, these brushes aren't my favorite in the world. I actually prefer like $1 random bamboo brushes. I think they're like about the same. One's wolf hair and one is goat hair, I think. And I like these a lot more. And then just like a bowl of semi ink. I think it's like just more consistent really because you get to control every single stroke, like how much ink is on the brush. It is a lot slower, and I would say that's the downside, and that's the upside to like a brush pen or like any pen that just has some kind of like reservoir to it or even a marker is that you get to immediately like keep transferring thoughts onto the page as you're drawing. So when I'm drawing this character, there's like no downtime of like, oh, I need to go and get more ink on the brush, and then I need to manage the ink and that sort of thing. And then when I come back, I'm kind of like forgetting where I was at or what I was doing. So you don't really have that with the brush pen, which can be really nice for doing a more like stream of conscious sort of drawing or something like that. You can just kind of go, go, go. And yeah, also speed. It is a bit faster in some ways, but it's a little hard to get great tone unless you're doing the smudges. I think I'll do some kind of like flower pattern. But yeah, I prefer the dip brush. I mean, it has its downsides. Like you do have to be at some kind of like stationary area to like it's a little hard to carry a large amount of ink like that. But I mean, you can still kind of have some portable things, like something similar to watercolor that you just kind of bring around. All right, we got some kind of pattern on there. I think I'll bringing that stripe design from there onto here. In my recent step-by-step videos of like kind of how to go about learning drawing from scratch, like from start to finish, like not knowing anything about art, one of the things that I kind of started talking about was cohesiveness of the drawing, so that like your characters and worlds kind of all go together, which was why I wanted to do like the perspective video, because I think that's a really good way to add cohesiveness within the characters. And another thing there's a lot of ways that you can add that cohesiveness. Like one way that I'm doing it is the patterns. So having these patterns kind of stack onto the characters and throughout the character, and even the thing that it's on kind of add like a bit of a attachment. So the brain will kind of see these as going together because there's like basically the pattern recognition of these things overlap, and so they can kind of create like some kind of unity with it. And same with the black areas. So this big banner that he has up here like is connected with the kind of big chunk of black down here and over here, so it creates a bit of like connection with the entire drawing. But like the other end, so I have these like random marks that came off my sketchbook from the demo, and that's like not very cohesive because there's nothing else that's orange on here. But if I was to add like color his helmet orange or something, then that would like add a bit of um cohesiveness, because it's like kind of replicated throughout the rest of the drawing. So yeah, and I might do similar characters as I go a bit further in the drawing too, and that's kind of a way that I like to add that kind of concept as well into the drawings. So I have the samurai character, and he's like about here, so I want to place another samurai back a ways. So one way that I really like to play around and experiment with ideas and character concepts and different things like that is doing multiple. So like I have this one warrior and I really like the idea of it, so we're going to add a second warrior. And one of the easiest parts that I can draw to like link up these ideas or kind of like duplicate that character to this spot is he has a really large like ornamental piece on his head. And so we can experiment with that. And I like to also do like variations. So maybe this one has a double ornament on it. Kind of like for fun. And it's a bit off on the like wings up here, but you can kind of mask it a bit and fix it as I go here. So yeah, we have a bit of a start, and we'll add the helmet. And the flaps. And then as I go down the character, I really want to like actually head down the character. So as I'm drawing downward, I'm trying to basically like pull the character downward. And if you saw the perspective video, I talked about that kind of being like a important thing for really just learning the perspective. I think is learn that kind of gravitational pull that the grid will create, and I think that's the key part for freehanding perspective. Once you kind of learn that, you don't really need a grid anymore to make believable scenes and different things like that. So we have the tongue out on that other character. We got the teeth, and we'll try to get a bit of the detail off that first one. I also found too, like replicating these characters to create some kind of like background or depth in the scenes. I started doing that because I noticed, so like if I have this character in the foreground and then here the character behind is like a totally different idea. Like let's say, I don't know, like I drew a dinosaur right here. It can work because I have enough room to like identify a dinosaur and like make it readable as a dinosaur. If the dinosaur was like this size of the character back here. But if I go any further back and I wanted to do like, then back there, I have like, I don't know, like a astronaut and he's in a spacesuit. It becomes very difficult to then draw like the astronaut with the spacesuit back further, because like the person viewing the drawing will see, oh, there's like this like undead samurai riding a like undead horse, and he's got a banner and he's holding a sword that's on fire. And then so they're thinking of those ideas, and then if they go back and they see another samurai riding an undead with a sword and a banner, then it's like, okay, those two things belong. And then like I could have 100 samurai like across the background getting super small, and even have like black dots in the background, and it would be very readable of like the banner, and the viewer would know what's happening on the page because it has something to compare it to, like between the characters and ideas. So there's a bit of like idea comparison to figure out what is happening. And like an example, I guess, is the flintlock down here looks a little out of place, and I kind of messed it up. And a bit of the reason that it kind of looks out of place is that he's holding a sword, and then so the brain doesn't necessarily go to, oh, he also has a gun in the other hand, so that's a bit weird and kind of like a good example, I guess, of what necessarily wouldn't be a good idea to draw there. And like it'd be fine if I was able to have enough room to actually like draw the rest of the gun in this front part, or if I even had his arm like coming out and then he was holding the gun and you could see the entirety of it from a good angle, then it would have been a good thing to draw there. But since it's cut off, it's a little awkward. Same with the horse here. If you could see his whole front of his face, it would make like for a better composition and kind of better thing to draw there. But yeah, it just kind of happens out sometimes like this. But I always think a lot of drawings are redeemable if I just kind of keep going with it. And it'll have some kind of use, whether it's like I learned from it or it kind of like fills a certain theme or idea that I've been kind of itching to draw. So yeah, just the repeated ideas I started doing a lot more because I wanted to do like as many characters on a page or and like more depth and add more things in the perspective. And as you get further back into the drawing, you sort of have to simplify a lot of characters unless you're working digitally, then you can just zoom in for a long ways and still have everything like readable if you draw small enough. But for like ink, it's a bit harder to do that as you start to run out of room and the brush nib is only a certain size. So yeah, even like the detail, I can make this samurai in the back look very detailed. And if his detail and his armor is matching what this one is, then it will make this character in the back look even more detailed because there's basically like a reference point that the viewer can kind of base your detail off of. So yeah, nowadays if I'm gonna do a drawing of like warriors or something, I like to keep them in a relatively similar theme. And then the shoulder, I really like how this shoulder turned out. And I could honestly make it like even larger on that back character. And it's a bit of like a variant, so it's not perfectly 1-to-1 on here. But that's kind of what I like. That's what I like about these drawings where I have these similar repeating ideas across the drawing is I get to try out multiple iterations and really explore like the idea itself. So this one is samurai, which I've done a lot of times, but even the base of it is like a variation of samurai. So it's like an undead kind of spirit kind of thing. So I get to explore like another avenue and like I did this variation. So it ends up with like a bit of a really good spot to place these shoulder plates, which was a little bit lacking on that front one. I didn't really have much room to place the shoulder plates. So yeah, that's why I like the variations. And then when I end this drawing, I'll kind of like know which ones that I like the most. And when I look back at this one, like down the road, I'll kind of immediately see which ones I think turned out the best. And then I'll take that information down the road of like how to change my decision making. Okay, and I'm just kind of working down the character. I had to do a large portion of black there to split up the shoulder. as there was a bit of like fluff happening with the detail there. All right, now I want to focus on the larger shapes going on here. I could honestly even have like a similar pose too, because I like how his sword is holding out. And it can kind of work as well, even though I'm not going to be able to see this back arm. What I was talking about earlier, you'll kind of be able to like put one to one together with the sleeve from the front one and kind of know what's happening in this back one. And I do kind of have a chance to redeem myself on the flintlock as well. So if I can fit it in here. Alright guys, I'm probably gonna end the video out here, and I think I'm gonna probably continue this in like a 2-part video coming up next, where I'll probably just like split it into 2 drawings where I finish it on this side and like finish the background a bit, and then I'll probably draw on the next one. So yeah.